In this Art to Heart, we cover zinester, scenester, trippy hippie, and freaky beatnik Rik Livingston, aka Mr. Verlin, who has created and continues to create an interesting body of work, perhaps most famously his comics, and that will be my main focus here, but he's also produced poems, paintings, sculptures, photography, and a Web 1.0 type website with the kind of things you'd expect that to entail: dead links, downloadable fonts, looping GIFs, the whole nine yards. His work can also be found on Instagram, which features his more recent paintings and sculptures, and it is a completely different era from his somewhat defunct website. But if you go back even further than the website to archive.org, it is another very distinct era and a treasure trove of interesting work. Flipping through digital recreations of limited run zines and comics that would be otherwise prohibitively rare is really cool. These scans and public access segments are preserved and shared by Demolition Kitchen, ran by Verlin's frequent collaborator, Joel Sanderson. Sanderson's bizarre, lysergic tunes can be heard in clips like the one at the end of this video, or the one I'm about to show you of this slideshow he made of photography.
Nothing sexual. Never animal. Nothing sexual. Never animal.
Through Sanderson's preservation efforts, we get a glimpse into an 80s and 90s San Francisco art collective known as Critical Mass.
Critical mass is the theory that, with the repression of the conservative climate and the recessive economy, the art stockpiled in the studios of the Bay Area's many creative people will soon reach critical mass pressure and burst out to cover the landscape.
I think it worked because I live multiple decades and time zones apart from then and there, and I'm holding some ZONO Comix right here. Also, Mr. Verlin seems to sell a lot of pieces, which is great. Not necessarily for the money. Money's nice too. Or, whatever. But it's just nice knowing that your art goes somewhere. It goes out into the world, on a wall somewhere, vibing out, speaking to somebody. Livingston creates wildly surreal art and channels all sorts of influences while remaining wholly original. Bosch, Rousseau, Hanna-Barbera, at points Herring, and there looks to be a bit of influence from the first wave of underground comics that came out of San Francisco. And, of course, an influence from Dada. Zono is a nonsense word similar to Dada, but rather than being based on psychoanalysis and internal absurdity, it's more about the falsehoods and absurdities of the external world rather than the internal world. ZONO Comix are positioned as both a realistic portrayal of life and a funhouse mirror. Kandinsky used to talk about how abstraction is the most real expression of art or reality or whatever, because all of that is too big to be contained in concrete forms. So you need abstraction to point to a grander truth. And yeah, that's true to an extent. I get what he's getting at, and he produced some clearly amazing work with that framework. But I would argue cartooning does something similar. There's this dialectic between how things feel and how they appear physically, which I feel like are two sides of a coin informing each other, that are part of each other, interlinked. To me, a good cartoon is more realistic than a real photo or abstraction because it reveals the hidden emotions, which is an invisible but present thing. It's like mind manifesting. Mind manifesting. Now, if only there was some word for that. Anyway, Verlin's art is often about how the psychedelic experience feels. Now, there is a real conversation to be had there about the very real risks involved in such entheogenic exploration, but these are only existential tales from the bargain basement of reason, so don't expect a nuanced breakdown of that there or here. But do expect a lot from these comics because they excel at what they do, in fact, do. What you get is a fun testament and beautiful encapsulation of this spiritual and psychedelic experience. Signifiers pointing towards the ineffable, capturing not only the look, but the emotional content in wonderfully stylized and expertly crosshatched black and white comics. With a style that is textured, some of his comics are in color, and some of his older black and white stuff was adapted to include color, which is convenient for me because I can show them side to side and say, which do you like better? Let me know in the comments. Are you team black and white? Are you team color? I'm team black and white. But there are certain instances where he adds details that are not there, and what's the harm in having two different versions, you know? Different strokes for different folks. Anyway, back to the actual topic of these comics. They cover topics one would expect from a Bay Area beatnik like Verlin, namely windows to other worlds, found freaky family, parties, festies, astral projection, or maybe that's lucid dreaming. Some kind of dreaming is involved, and of course, magic reality bending potions. Subtle. In one story, a sage, Isaiah Wormwood, creates a potion from liver, strawberry ice cream, hot mustard, and extra strength scissor. I love this unholy concoction trope. Very bathtub gin, very Reba.
A little scoop of plaster mix, some coffee grounds and mud, and then she stirred it with a ladle.
This potion gets you as close as possible to ultimate power.
Master of the world, ultimate power.
Ultimate power. But also tastes like shit, you know, humbling. Another interesting story is about the Jubgul. Jubgul. Is it like jungle? I kind of want to pronounce it like Google out of disdain for big tech, also out of the Bay Area. But the Jubgul is central to the existential message of ZONO, and this story is adapted from one of Verlin's old poems. It's about someone trying to poke holes in the firmament to pass through the Jubgul to the beginning of time and to show the others that they are bending themselves in pretzels for a bunch of false standards and under the oppression of signs, you know, do this, don't do that. And of course, the mortal enemy of 80s long haired freaky people, a mummified Reagan in cognitive decline.
Lobotomy patients for Reagan, and his eyes are hexed out. They were brainless.
Spoiler alert, but our protagonist here lives her entire earthly life not succeeding at destroying all the falsehoods of the Jubgul. But it's never the end. She's pointed to something beyond the scene. Having poked some holes in the enemy's defenses, the torch is passed to the reader to rip up the boundaries and, you know, freak out the squares. There's some fourth wall breaking that was all the rage 10 years ago. But these comics were 20 years before that. He's very skilled, usually very polished, not always, but regardless, he never loses that DIY edge, that fingerprinted underground charm. These days, Verlin makes a lot of paintings and a lot of sculptures out of trash and bric-a-brac, a technique known in his scene as gomi. Basically, upcycling, but artsy with a Japanese name. There is also the elevating and recontextualizing of junk culture. Under their definition, I think stuff like Lichtenstein would also be gomi, but unlike Lichtenstein, comics are high art. Whatever that means.
Rik Livingston.
Can you hear me right now?
I can hear me. The people on the TV can hear me too.
Oh.
But what is it you want?
Stuff in the text, and then the slides. So we just want to let it roll and then start fading back into
We got about 15 seconds, Neil. Then it starts fading through.
well, at the end.
Oh, high art. Yeah. High art. That jacket is so cool. That jacket is so goddamn cool. Tell me that ain't the coolest jacket.